Welcome to another episode of the Ex-Boyfriend Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sider, and today we're going to be talking about 7 texts to send to your ex when you miss them. And these 7 texts are going to be based on real life results. I did a lot of research trying to figure out what the best way was to conquer this particular topic and figured out what you probably really want is to see some real life results from some of my clients, and that's what I'm going to show you today. So you're going to get 7 texts that real people have used to start conversations with their exes. Now, before I get started, my recommendation to everyone who is starting the process of trying to get your ex back is to hop over to my website, www.exboyfriendrecovery.com, and take my ex recovery chances quiz. If you're listening onto the podcast, all you got to do is just simply go to my website, Ex-Boyfriend Recovery, and look for the quiz there. If you're watching this on YouTube, all you have to do is simply look in the description link below this YouTube video and click the link you see there, and it will take you directly to the quiz. So let's get started and talk about the 7 texts that you can send to your ex when you miss them. And I think starting this off is an important tactic that needs to be covered first. So before you even send a text or even dream about constructing a text, one thing that you should have already done is implemented a no contact rule and completed it. We find that this is an important element, and one of the reasons that these 7 text messages worked on their exes was the fact that the people who had implemented the text messages have also implemented a no contact rule. So what I need you to do is, before you even consider sending these texts, pick one of the time frames that best suits your situation when it comes to the no contact rule. Either the 21-day rule, the 30-day rule, or the 45-day rule. And then stick to it and do your no contact period. Once you've done that, we can talk about the purpose of texting your ex. So a lot of people think that the goal of sending a text message to your ex is to get them back, but Rome wasn't built in a day, and you certainly are not going to win your ex back in a day. It's best to think of text messages as a tool to help you get to your overall goal. And that overall goal is to get your ex back. But in order to do that, conversations must first be had. So instead of thinking of a text message as this be-all, end-all tactic where you get your ex to respond to you and declare their undying love, think of it first as a way to simply start a conversation. And you're going to find that's the common theme among every single one of the text messages that I'm going to show you today. Speaking of which, let's get to our first text message. Text message number 1. This person said, "I have a question, and I really only trust you to answer it." Now, why did this text message work? Well, let me first off start by saying that this person who sent this text message got a response from the ex within 35 minutes of sending it. As I go through these text messages, I'm going to explain to you why I believe it worked, the response time, if the response time was available for my client or if they even gave that to me, and some of the conversation that happened afterwards. So why did this work? Well, because it really creates that damsel in distress vibe. By simply saying, "I have a question and I really only trust you to answer," you're putting your ex in the hero role. He's the only one to answer. He's the only one that you trust enough to respect their answer. So the other interesting thing about this is, usually when you say, "I have a question and I really only trust you to answer," the ex is going to respond, "Hey, what is it?" Well, she was able to allow the conversation to unfold because she tapped into one of his interests. And I believe the interest that she tapped into here was glasses, specifically for going shooting. She was her ex was a very avid gun expert, and she wanted to get his advice on what kind of glasses she should wear if she wanted to do that. And that got him to open up. And you're going to notice that's a common theme throughout many of these text messages. So let's move on to text message number 2. Text message number 2. "I have a confession to make. This is insert name. I don't know if the new SIM card messes with these things." Now, first thing I want to say that simply by using the "I have a confession to make" text, we found that yields close to a 90% response rate. And in this case, it got a response within 1 hour. So a little bit longer than you would hope, but it did get a response. Now, she also tried a really interesting strategy here. The secondary part to the text message, hey, this is, you insert your name. I don't know if the new SIM card messes with these things. It's an interesting strategy because I believe that she was blocked and she had to go get a new number with the new SIM card, and she had memorized her ex's number. So she tried to put the SIM card statement in to get away with the fact that this is kind of like a quote-unquote strange number texting the ex. And interestingly enough, he was very responsive when she did this, even though he had been the one to block her. He went around to say something like, oh, hey, yeah, the new SIM card's working great. And the trick here is, though, she needed to have a delicate confession to make that wasn't going to freak him out. So her confession was that she liked one of the shows that he recommended, and that opened the floodgates to a pretty nifty conversation. Now, text message number 3 is pretty basic. Someone just simply said, so, have you heard the news? This works basically because it's based on curiosity. Right? So one thing that we're learning here is that pattern interrupts seem to work real well. Suddenly saying like, hey, I got a confession to make, or hey, have you heard the news? That's a pattern interrupt. But also curiosity. Embedding some type of curiosity in the text message works really well too. That's exactly what this text message is. So, have you heard the news? The intended thought that the ex is supposed to have is, what news? I want to hear this news. And she got a response within 32 minutes, which isn't too bad. And his responses were question mark, and then a little while later, well, question mark. I don't have really much more to go on the conversation that happened here because she just simply screenshotted the immediate response after 32 minutes and was just giddy over the moon that her ex even had reached out to her or responded to her initial text message. So this is something that you can put in your back pocket and use when you need it. Text message number 4. Jesse Pinkman has entered the Westworld verse. Where do you think they're going this season? Now, this is an interest-based text almost immediately. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it's taking one of her ex-boyfriend's interests and embedding it into the initial text message. I don't have information on how long it took the ex to respond to this, but he engaged with her immediately and even said that he was really glad to hear from her. So, really, we're noticing patterns developing here. Pattern interrupts, curiosity, and interest-based text message. If you can find a way to combine all 3, it looks like you found the holy grail. Let's keep going. Text message number 5. Hey there, I need your monster truck expertise. Here is yet another interest-based text message. Though, interestingly enough, it didn't get a response really quickly. It got a response within 4 hours, which is a pretty long time, and I bet you my client was freaking out throughout those 4 hours saying, this doesn't work. Oh my God, this was an awful idea. And then, of course, when the response came, 360 or 180, I suppose. Now, what's interesting here is that she weaves some jealousy into the text. So the initial text was like, hey, I need your monster truck expertise. And of course, he was like, hey, yeah, shoot, what do you need? She responded by saying, I got asked to a monster truck show. That is an excellent way of weaving in jealousy because guess what? He's going to be sitting there and thinking, who asked her to the monster truck show? That sounds like a date. I hope it's not another guy. That gets his wheels turning a little bit. Really effective use of text messaging there. Now, text message number 6 is kind of a weird one. I keep seeing your bike. Her ex was a very avid motorcyclist, I suppose. Now, this is kind of a mix of an interest-based text message and curiosity-based. So the curiosity actually comes in by simply saying, hey, I keep seeing your bike. He's curious and saying, like, where are you when you're seeing my bike? But it's also interest-based because guess what? He's really into his bike. It took him a while to respond to this one as well. 3 hours to be exact. And her ex, of course, was really into bikes, but he quickly shifted the focus onto her, asking about a triathlon that she had coming up. A great example of a text message that's just simply meant to bridge the gap and start a conversation. That's the best use of first text messages starting up conversations. Don't try to win everything with one specific text message. I hate to break it to you guys, but the magic bullet of a text message that immediately brings a man to his knees doesn't exist. I've never seen one do that, but I've seen one create conversations that can do that. So her ex, being really into bikes, quickly shifted the focus by asking her about her triathlon coming up. That's text message number 6 that we have found worked. Text message number 7, finally, here it is. Guess what I got to try out? An almost entirely curiosity-based text message once again. So what is the pattern we're seeing develop here? Pattern interrupts, curiosity, interest-based. All of these things really make a difference at getting responses from X. So how long did it get a response? Or how long did this text message take to get a response? Well, in all, it took 28 minutes for this particular woman to get a response. And she allowed the conversation to continue by implementing one of his interests, some type of headphones. So the conversation initially went like this. Hey, guess what I got to try out? He goes, what? The headphones that he recommends, and then the conversation flows from there. So the big thing I want you guys to take away here as you're listening to this podcast episode or even watching this on YouTube as I put it up on YouTube is the fact that when you're looking at creating a text message, don't try to do too much with the first text message. Just simply look at it as a tool to start a conversation. Create enough curiosity, interest, and a big enough pattern interrupt to grab your ex's attention. The idea here is when he sees a text message from you, he'll look at it and immediately want to open it up and respond to it. But the interesting thing is looking at these 7 text messages, not all of these women got responses really quickly. In fact, I believe the shortest one was 28 minutes. That's a pretty long time because usually when I get a text message and I'm interested in talking to someone, I'll respond immediately. Some people had 4 hours until they got a response. So it's important to be patient here. The general rules of dating don't necessarily apply when you're trying to get an ex back or trying to make an ex miss you or even trying to start a conversation with your ex. So keep those things in mind.